In the Weinberg home, one of our favorite fruits is the strawberry. Everyone knows that if a 2-pound box of strawberries arrives from the store and is washed and checked for bugs and put in the refrigerator, it'll likely be gone before the next meal arrives. We love the strawberry. Its sweetness with its touch of tang, its juiciness with its touch of crunch from the outer seeds, and its beautiful color and aroma provides for an amazing bite of what we in our house like to call Hashem's candy. While the fruit is certainly delicious, the question of what bracha to make on this wonderful fruit is not a simple one. Its complexity speaks to an important concept about trees and humans that we can contemplate this Shabbat in the aftermath of Tu Bishvat. The Mishnah says that there are different brachot that Chazal instituted for foods depending on their type and growth and usage. One of the things the Mishnah tells us is that the bracha over fruit of the tree is Bori Pri Ha'etz, and the bracha over the fruit of the ground is Bori Pri Ha'adama. How do we define fruits of the ground versus fruits of the tree? What is the halachic definition of a tree? Do we follow the botanical or scientific definition? Do we follow some colloquial definition? Do we follow a definition that's subjective based on what we see and what we feel? The difficulty of which bracha to say on strawberries centers upon this very question. The Gemara provides a rule of thumb for this important halachic determination of a tree for the purpose of bracha. The Gemara says, Heichi dechi shakalt leila piri, ita legavza v'hadar mafik. Avahecha dechi shakalt leila piri, leite legavza v'hadar mafik, lo mevarchinan alei bori pri'etz, ela bori pri'adama. When you have a species of a plant where if you take off the fruit, the gavza, whatever that means, remains and sprouts new fruit, that's Bori Pri Ha'etz. However, if you take off the fruit and the gavza, whatever that is gone, then that's Bori Pri Ha'adama. According to the simple reading of the Gemara, translated into modern terms, the fruit of perennials would be ha'etz, whereas the fruit of annuals would be ha'adama. Fruit that comes from a plant that remains from year to year and simply generates new fruit would receive a bracha of ha'etz, whereas fruit that comes from a plant that needs to be replanted each year would receive a bori pri ha'adama. While that delineation appears to be fairly simple and straightforward, when you drill down further on this definition, it requires more elaboration, at which point an important question arises. What exactly does the Gemara mean when it says, Ita legavza v'hadar mafik, that its gavza remains and sprouts new fruit? What is gavza? What must remain of the tree from year to year in order for the species to be considered a tree? The Tur quotes a fascinating debate among the Rishonim about this very question. The first opinion the Tur quotes is that of Rabbi Yitzchak, who applies the broadest possible reading to the Gemara's definition of a perennial, saying that as long as the tree grows new fruit each year and doesn't need to be replanted, it's called a tree. Even if all that remained of the tree was its roots, which caused it to grow again and produce new fruit, it would be considered a tree, and its fruits would be classified as fruits of the tree, and they would receive a bracha of Bori Pri Ha'etz. The second opinion the Tur cites is that of Rabbi Yosef, based on a tshuva of the Gaonim. It's also the opinion of Rashi on our Gemara and Brachos. This Rabbi Yosef applies a stricter reading to the Gemara's definition of regeneration. He says that gavza, which the Gemara says must remain from year to year in order to be considered a tree, is the branch of the tree. This means that to be considered a tree, the branches must remain from year to year and simply produce new fruit. The leaves may die, the flowers and fruit may wither, the branches may even get a little bit dry, but they must remain intact and generate fruit from the same spot the following season. That's what happens to apple trees, orange trees, pear trees, and the like. The fruit's taken off, the branches remain bare, and then those same branches produce new fruit the next season. However, if the tree withers and disappears over the winter, and the trunk or the branches grow anew from the roots which remained underground, that would not qualify as a halachic tree, and its fruits would remain Bori Pri Ha'adama. The strawberry takes center stage in this debate between Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yosef and is the exact practical outcome of their argument. Strawberries grow on low bushes that are perennial. However, its branches do not remain from year to year. It regenerates each season from its roots. After bearing fruit at least once or twice for the season, as the colder weather hits, the strawberry plants enter dormancy. Because the strawberry plant is a forb, its branches are soft and they have no bark to protect them from the cold, so they tend to dry up and to die. Once dead, the branches, meaning the leaflets, the shoots, the runners, if you can imagine a strawberry patch, those branches that produce the fruits can be cut back or raked away, with only the roots remaining beneath the soil and perhaps the crown just above it. Once the warmer weather comes, the plant will regenerate, producing new leaflets, new runners, new fruits, and new flowers. According to Rabbi Yitzchak, strawberries would be Borei Priya 8, since the strawberry plant's roots produce new fruits each year, and they don't need to be replanted. However, according to Rabbi Yosef and the Gaonim, since the strawberry plants lose their branches from year to year, they cannot qualify as a tree, even if they regenerate from their roots, and the strawberry's bracha for them would remain Borei Priya Adama. The Shulchan Aruch rules in accordance with this latter restrictive view of Rabbi Yosef and the Gaonim and says that the correct bracha for strawberries is Borei Priya Adama, which is indeed our practice until today. While I could talk about strawberries all day long, it is this debate of Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yosef surrounding the correct bracha over the strawberry and the Gemara's definition of a tree that interests me on this post-Tu Bishvat Shabbos, as trees are on our mind. The Gemara, according to both Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yosef, is pointing to the great hope of regeneration that is inherent in every tree. They each suggest that in some way, even when a part of the tree appears to be lifeless, one can and must have the faith and understanding that beneath the surface, there's still the potential for life and rebirth. Rabbi Yosef says it in a moderate way. Even if the tree branches seem to have lost their fruit, so long as the branches remain, there's hope for new life. Rabbi Yitzchak says it in a more extreme, more aggressive way. Even if the entire tree is gone, so long as its roots remain in the soil, there's hope for new life. He says that even a strawberry patch that looks decimated after the season is over can reproduce beautiful, luscious, aromatic, colorful fruit once again because of its roots, and therefore can be considered perennial and warrants the more specific and praiseworthy bracha of Borei Priya Eitz. What an amazingly hopeful and empowering thought. The tree itself, by its nature, provides for such a marvelous metaphor for life and a philosophy that each of us can strive to emulate. Even when things seem down or depressed or dull or tedious or wearying, we can and must still believe that beneath the surface radical change is happening and that more of life is yet to come. It is that metaphor of hope for life contained within the very DNA of a tree and reinforced by the celebration of Tu B'Shvat. The month of Shvat is the date of demarcation for the agricultural mitzvahs of Trumos and Maasros, because even though the tree at the time of year of Shvat may still be looking a bit dry and perhaps may not have flowered yet, there is so much potential within the trees to come back to life that they must be considered alive, and that this time must be considered the start of their life season. The Gemara says that Shvat is the Rosh Hashanah La'ilanot because the majority of the rain of the season had fallen. Hol v'yatzu rov gishmei shana. Rashi gives a very vivid, detailed description of what that means, which reinforces our lesson about the very nature of trees and the celebration of this holiday. He says what it means that the majority of water has fallen is shekvar avar rov yemos hageshamim shuzman revia, that the majority of the season has passed, the days have passed, the time of the rainfall has already come and gone. Ve'ala hasraf be'ilanos, and the sap has already begun to seep up and to be soaked up and to rise within the tree. V'nimsu haperos chontin me'ata. And therefore we find that the fruits can bud and blossom from here on in. What Rashi is illustrating for us in terms of the importance, what Rashi is illustrating for us in terms of the importance of Tu B'Shvat, is that even when on the surface nothing much seems to be happening and the tree still seems lifeless, beneath the surface of the tree, life is actually developing once again. Even if what's visible to the naked eye looks deteriorated, gone, diminished, withered, done, one can and must understand that the tree is not dead. Underneath it all, there is something ready to sprout once again. If the roots are intact, if there's sap in the branches, if there's water in the ground, if life can flow back into the tree and cause it to flourish and to sprout and to grow new fruits and flowers, then it is considered very much alive. Shvat is the new year of trees, a time of new beginnings, a time of hope, and a time to celebrate, because it is the time of year when, if you were to look inside the tree beneath the surface, you would realize that it has all the tools and the potential to be reborn and to come back to life after the winter season. The ground is saturated with water, the nutrients have been restored, and the sap, literally the lifeblood of the tree, is already in the branches, ready and waiting to give forth new life. Shvat is the time of year when we can celebrate the miracle of regeneration, which is definitional to the tree itself. Miriam Peretz captured this idea so beautifully in a short video she released this week explaining the significance of Tu B'Shvat. As many of you know, Miriam Peretz is an inspiring Israeli woman who unfortunately lost two sons, Uriel and Eliraz, while they were serving in the IDF. Uriel died in Lebanon in 1998. Eliraz died in Gaza in 2010. And she lost her husband shortly after she lost Uriel, when he died of a broken heart. She's a woman filled with immense love of Medinat Yisrael, an immense love of Torah, and a woman who is filled with so much faith in Hashem despite the tragic setbacks of her life. I could listen to her speak over and over, time and time again, because her story is one that inspires me. In this week's video that she released, she showed everyone the tree outside her home. And here's what she said.
ט"ו בשבט, חג לאילן, חג לאילנות. איזה אילן? תסתכלו על העץ הזה שלי, כולו יבש, מה יש פה לשמוח? אבל זה חג לאנשים שלא מתייאשים. זה סמלו של החג. זה חג של אמונה. זה חג שמסתכל על העץ היבש ויודע שהוא יפרח. זה חג של תקווה. כי כשאני מתבוננת על העץ, אני רואה כי האדם עץ השדה. אנחנו דומים לעץ. עוברים עליו משברים, רוחות, שערות, השילת עליו, נראה עירום לחלוטין, כאילו לא תהיה לו תקומה. אבל רק עם אמונה, ועם סבלנות, ועם התמדה, העץ הזה עוד יפרח ויעלה גבוה גבוה.
She says, and I'm paraphrasing now what she just said in Hebrew, what do we have to celebrate on Tu B'Shvat, the holiday of trees? This tree, the tree she was pointing to in her garden, it's dead and dry. No, she says, Tu B'Shvat is the holiday for those who do not despair. It's the holiday of faith and the holiday of hope. It's the holiday on which we look at the dry tree and know it will blossom and bloom. She explained that when she looks at a tree, she sees the story of a human being. A tree undergoes many hardships, winds and storms, and looks completely naked and ruined as if it will never be reborn. But with faith and patience and perseverance, it will regenerate and it will blossom and it will grow tall once again. Although it's very cold here in Maryland, and although we might get some snow and rain this week, we can, for just a moment this Shabbos, imagine ourselves in the land of Israel, staring at Miriam Peretz's tree, which is just about to bloom. We can imagine ourselves staring at the state of Israel, staring at the Jewish people as a whole, and staring at our own life stories. What I think we'll discover in all those realms is the constantly reverberating story of the tree. The story of the species which, unlike the fruits of the land, which has to be replanted every year, Trees may lose their fruit, they may seem to wither, but as long as part remains, as long as the gavza is there, whether that's the branches or the roots, as long as part remains, they continue to give forth fruit once again. What I think we'll discover in all those realms is the philosophy of life, which tells us to have hope and helps us see beneath the surface to the place where life is reborn. I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, a belated happy Tu Bishvat, and a wonderful season to come. Shabbat Shalom.